And Carl, I'll start with you. Where do you stand on waterboarding?
Look, I don't think waterboarding's that bad. We get waterboarded as part of our training. It's miserable, it's not fun, but guess what? It's not that bad. And if we had waterboarded this guy that they caught in Brussels, we might have had the information to stop this attack. So I think it should be brought back out.
It's miserable, but it's not that bad. But you, Carl, I have to stick with you for a second. You actually say that waterboarding could have prevented these attacks in Brussels.
Well, I can tell you, not waterboarding didn't get us the information, so why not give it a shot?
All right, where do you stand, Pete Hegseth?
Well, I actually don't have much of a problem with waterboarding if it's gonna get us the intelligence we need in real time. I think we fall over ourselves to apologize for what America represents when our enemies are beheading our journalists and our people. The problem is the rhetoric and incoherence of what Donald Trump talks about. One minute he's for troops on the ground, the next minute he isn't. He says he wants to torture, but his advisors say, no, that's not what he means. He's not grounded in a real understanding of what his rhetoric means, and therefore he overcomplicates a situation where I think, for the most part, Carl and I agree. We need to unleash warfighters, let them go find this enemy and kill him. But his rhetoric is unhelpful in the way that he talks about it.
I think he's been pretty clear on that.
What do you make of that, though? Pete's making the argument, Carl, that it's more the delivery of the message.
Well, I think he's been very clear on it. I mean, he wants to bomb the crap out of ISIS, and I think he wants to take back waterboarding. And if the laws permit him, he wants to do much worse, which I fully stand behind. I think he's right.
All right. So Donald Trump and Ted Cruz appear to agree on at least one thing. Donald Trump said late yesterday that he agreed with Ted Cruz's proposal to target Muslim neighborhoods, calling it a good idea. Have we found common ground, Carl?
Well, I think we have. And this is the beginning of Donald Trump bringing the Republican Party together. I think the message is all getting on board. And I think what's happening is a lot of people are coming around. Look, he's not targeting Muslim neighborhoods. He just wants to maintain the same level of police force in those Muslim neighborhoods as everywhere else, because there's a lot of neighborhoods like Dearborn, Michigan, where police don't go because they're afraid.
Pete, based on your experience, would this work, Muslim surveillance?
Well, it did work with the NYPD before de Blasio got rid of it. I mean, you're talking about engagement, surveillance, intelligence. It's smart. It's common sense to go where the threat is. Hey, I know that 100% of Muslims are not terrorists, but 100% of Islamic terrorists have been Muslims and emanating from certain mosques and certain communities. We should be smart about how we allocate resources. And as it applies to Europe, they've got entire no-go zones, parts of cities where bombers are provided haven. If those police forces aren't able to target because of political correctness, it's just a preview of what America could become. So when Donald Trump and Ted Cruz talk about this, they're ripping back the curtain, the false choice that so many of our politicians give us, that we're forsaking our values if we target the enemy. That's just wrong, and we're at war right now, and we should need to recognize that.
And Pete, you hit the nail on the head there. You look at any country in the world where Muslims are the minority, they're screaming for minority rights, but anywhere where Muslims are the majority, there are no minority rights. So why are we letting them defeat us at our own game?
All right, so based on both of your experience in the military, which is significant, I want to just get your take broadly. Are we having the right conversation in this country about how to combat this?
Well, I think the way to combat this is we're going to have to go over and take the fight to them. The problem is our president, with his limp-wristed foreign policy, has failed to define this enemy. We know where their territory is. Let's start destroying it now.
All right, and Carl, you've been very vocal of your support for Donald Trump, and you say that many of your peers in the military support him as well. Pete Hegseth, who has the best plan that you have seen laid out by the presidential candidates to defeat ISIS?
Well, the guy who I felt like had the best plan was Marco Rubio. He's not in the race anymore. I think Ted Cruz has a very strong, coherent understanding of the enemy that we face, an understanding of the military and how we need to rebuild it, and he understands how to articulate it in ways that name the enemy, target the enemy, but aren't sort of wildly vacillating between extremes and throwing out bombastic statements like Trump does about torture, about Muslims, about so many things that teeter on the edge of what we should be saying when we need to engage allies in so many different parts of this battle. I think Ted Cruz has a real good sense of what it would mean to be commander-in-chief. But the debate needs to happen, and both candidates are at least having it.
All right. Thank you to you both.
Thank you.
All right, well, another ugly turn on the campaign trail, this time involving the wives of the men 1 and 2 in the GOP presidential race. Guy Benson and Adriana Cohen are next with that. Plus, Catholic nuns are fighting against Senator Ted Cruz's wife is firing back over an ugly new campaign trail fight, ensnaring the wives of the men at the top of the polls for the GOP nomination. It started with a controversial new ad featuring a nude Melania Trump. Mr. Trump blamed Senator Cruz for it, despite the fact that it did not come from the Texas senator's campaign. The GOP frontrunner tweeting, "Lion Ted Cruz just used a picture of Malania from a GQ shoot in his ad. Be careful, Lion Ted, or I will spill the beans on your wife." Trace Gallagher has the latest on this. Trace.
Sandra, the picture of a nude Melania Trump was featured in a Facebook ad targeted to Mormons and produced by Make America Awesome, an anti-Trump super PAC that has no known connection to the Cruz campaign. Ted Cruz tweeted, quoting, "Pick of your wife, not from us. Donald, if you try to attack Heidi, you're more of a coward than I thought. Hashtag classless." Trump doesn't believe Cruz and responded by saying, quote, "That's why we call him Lying Ted." And now that Trump is threatening to spill the beans on Heidi Cruz, there is rampant speculation about what the beans might be. Former Trump campaign advisor Roger Stone, who is still a Trump confidant, has accused the Cruzes of having a troubled marriage and has pointed to a 2005 heavily redacted Austin police report where an officer found Heidi Cruz next to an expressway and decided she might be a danger to herself. Ted Cruz advisors have explained the incident, acknowledging that a decade ago, Heidi Cruz experienced a brief battle with depression, but got through it with prayer and the love and support of her family. Today, Heidi Cruz deflected questions about the Trump threat. Listen.
As I said, you probably know by now that most of the things that Donald Trump says have no basis in reality. So we are not worried in the least. We're focusing on our campaign, and we are going to continue to do that.
Heidi Cruz is a senior executive at Goldman Sachs who is on leave to help her husband's campaign. The nude picture of Trump's then-girlfriend Melania Trump was taken for British GQ back in 2000. Sandra.
All right, Trace, thank you. Joining us now, Guy Benson is a Fox News contributor and co-author of End of Discussion, and Adriana Cohen is a Boston Herald columnist and radio show host. Adriana, is it ever appropriate on the campaign trail to go after a family member? First question, aside from whether or not Ted Cruz had anything to do with it, is family fair game?
Well, you know, I certainly don't like to see anybody's family get dragged through the mud. But, you know, if you go after Donald Trump and you attack his wife, he has every right to defend himself, and he has a right to punch back.
Okay, all right,
and
but wait, hold on. Based on that statement, I have to get this in here, because the super PAC operator, which is run by a woman, Liz Mayer, a Republican strategist, she has said, "I know you're really upset about that ad, Donald Trump, but it was Make America Awesome's, not Ted Cruz's." She's denying any of Ted Cruz's involvement. In fact, she thanks Donald Trump for getting the ad so much attention. Your response?
Well, you know, I think she's just probably took a lot of heat from Ted Cruz, because now what Mitt Romney's former campaign person, Liz Mayer, did is she effectively dragged Heidi Cruz in the mud. Now Donald Trump, you know, is going to push back on Ted Cruz's wife because he was provoked by this individual, Liz Mayer. And so she's probably in a heap of trouble. She probably got a phone call from Ted Cruz's people saying, "Why did you do this? Now you've dragged my wife into this race." And so she's trying to, you know, provide some cover for Ted Cruz. But look, we don't know if Ted Cruz knew about this ad coming or not. I mean, we could take him at his word. People are certainly welcome to do that.
Let me go with
but
that
he
point
benefited in Utah. I mean, this ad launched to throw the delegates, the caucus, to Ted Cruz in Utah. So, I mean, he certainly benefited from it.
So, Guy, Adriana is pointing out something that some people are pointing out, and that just because he's not connected with the super PAC, that he could still be behind the message.
There's zero evidence of that. And I think that this particular episode may be a fresh low in a campaign that has been characterized by boorishness and pettiness because of Donald Trump's presence in it. And what it's done in this instance, it has showcased Donald Trump's signature ignorance, where he is blaming inaccurately Ted Cruz for an ad that, by the way, I won't defend at all, that was not connected to Cruz. It was connected to this outside super PAC that has been trolling Donald Trump for months. It also has underscored Donald Trump's low-rent temperament, where he takes his misplaced rage and directs it at another candidate's spouse through a threat. It's just classless and it's stupid, which is unsurprising.
Well, Guy, what do you
Okay,
expect him
hold
to
on.
do? When somebody goes after your wife, what is he supposed to do? Just take it? Any man would defend
No.
his wife.
No, I'm not saying that
What
at
is he
all.
supposed to do?
Well, how about-
what would
how
you
about-
like him to do?
Go ahead, Guy.
What I would like him to do is to respond by defending his wife and to criticize the people who launched the attack, not to say, oh, I'm going to assume this was launched by
But
someone
should
else
Ted Cruz have
wrongly.
come out and condemn the use of his
Yes.
wife in that ad?
Yeah,
Guy.
I believe that Cruz should. I'm not defending the ad at all. I think Melania Trump should be left out of this. I think Heidi Cruz should be left out of it. But Donald Trump's knee-jerk, reflexive reaction was to blame the wrong person and threaten his wife.
And just to be clear, we've got to leave it there, but to be clear, I'll remind everybody when Ted Cruz's daughters were targeted by a cartoonist, every GOP candidate came to his defense and said that kids are not fair game in the election
Agreed.
process. We're going to
Agreed.
have to leave it there.
That's right.
Thank
and
you
you
to
know
both.
what? If Ted Cruz should have denounced that ad
Thank
right
you.
up front.
Thank
and he
you.
didn't.
All right, breaking tonight.